previous lecture, we saw how to connect Next.js with FaunaDB, and that indeed returned some results, but it was not in a consumable format. So in this one, what we'll do is we'll be making use of a client called Apollo, which in turn will query Fauna handler that we created, and that is going to return results to us. As you can see over here, we are reading the content from the shop document. So here we have the title, the description, and the owner ID all coming from FaunaDB. So let's get started and see what we need to do in order to achieve this. The first thing that you need to do is run this command npm install apollo/client. This is going to install the Apollo client, which we will be using to query FaunaDB. And then we'll also have GraphQL. Along with that, we also need to install npm GraphQL-tag. Once you have installed this package, you need to head over to your next.config.mjs file. And over here, you need to import the GraphQL loader. After that, we need to add this piece of code, that's Webpack, and we are basically using this loader. Now, why this is required? Because we have a file called schema.graphql. If I take you over here, I've modified it a bit, and now it contains a method called getAllShops, and it's taking the collection name as an input, and it's going to give me this result. So this by default is not supported, and that's the reason why we need to have this GraphQL-tag package installed, and then we need to configure our next.config.mjs file. Now once we have done that and our schema.graphql is also ready, the next thing that we need to do is, if you see over here under pages, we have this API directory where we previously created FaunaHandler.ts. Now this method is going to be as is. We are not going to make any changes over here. For now, the collection name is hard-coded, but we will later down the line make this parameterized so that we can pass any collection name and get the desired result. Now, the next thing is creating another file, and we are calling it as apollo client.ts. Now, here, if you see, we have taken these or imported these Apollo client in memory cache, GQL, normalized cache object, and HTTP link. Now, the role of HTTP link is to make GET request. If you don't want to do that, you can just create a client object as I've done over here, and this is going to do a default post. Now, in our case, we need the GET request, and for that, you can see that we are making use of this HTTP link. We are providing the URI, API Fauna handler, and then we are saying use GET for queries as true. Now, another thing you'll notice over here, you can ignore this red line because by default these things are not supported. That's the reason why we are getting this. So here we are importing getAllShops from this file, and you can see that this is the definition we have over here. Now going back to our client file, if you don't wish to have this thing or in a separate file, what you can do is you can just define it over here in the Apollo client file itself, like I've done over here as a sample. So we have this getAllShops. Now, the next thing is creating the client. Over here, we are calling Apollo client normalized object, and inside that we are passing the HTTP link instance and cache. Once that's done, we are going to this fetch all shops method. Now this is taking the client and collection name as parameters, and then we are calling this client.query, and over here we are passing the query, the variable or the collection name, and the fetch policy. So it's always going to fetch it from the server, and then we are returning the data over here. Finally, we are exporting the client. Now let's save this, and we'll now go to another file that we have created, that's app_app.tsx. Now within this, you'll notice that we have imported these two things, Apollo provider and client, and we are encapsulating the component within the Apollo provider tag. So this is required when you're making use of Apollo client. And once that's done, we'll be heading over to our index.tsx file. Now here we have these three things, and these two out of that is for making queries. So here we are using use Apollo client, and you can see we have this over here, and then fetch all shops is the method that we have defined inside Apollo client. Then we have this const shop data and set shop data. This is from the previous lecture. And now we have our method get all shop data. Here we are passing the collection name, and then here we are saying fetch all shops. And we have passed these two parameters, Apollo client and collection name. Once we have received the result, we are logging it in the console. And finally, we are taking the data and mapping it to shop data array. Then we are setting the set shop data with that output. Now once that's done, we'll be iterating over here. So we are saying the name of the shop, the description, and the owner. Now let's save this and run it. So here it's already running, but let's terminate this and then run it one more time. And there you go. We're getting the output over here.